It's our custom to introduce, give our various participating congregations a chance to stand. So we'll read off the congregations that we believe might be here and ask you to stand and just say hello. First, the Harvard Unitarian Universalist Church folks. Welcome. First Church Unitarian Littleton. First Church Lancaster, Unitarian Universalist. Unitarian Church of Marlborough and Hudson. Welcome. First Parish Church of Bolton. Anyone today? First Church of Berlin. Anyone here today from the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Fitchburg? Not today. And First Parish Church of Stow and Acton. Are there any other churches that we didn't mention that are represented here today? Westborough? Oh. Carlisle.
St. Andrew Press in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Is there anybody that can beat that travel distance?
I'm not from a church, but I'm visiting my brother. I live in Israel, so.
Huh?
You can have somebody from Mexico here, right? Mexico.
Okay. So I believe childcare is available today for younger children in the lower level of the
Unitarian Church in Westborough.
Westborough.
Yay. One more.
Back.
Okay. It's
So today's collection will be, as is our custom, will be donated to the UUSC, the Unitarian Universalist Social Committee, and there'll be more information about the UUSC later in the service, just before the collection. And please join us in Fellowship Hall following today's service for refreshments, conversation, celebration, and cake. And for those of you that aren't familiar, the Fellowship Hall is the easternmost part of our building. If you came in the lower entrance, it'd be just to the right of there. So we've got plenty of refreshments for all, and we look forward to that. So I also look forward to seeing you all again at the 30th annual Joint Sunday Service in August of 2033. And now I'd like to introduce Eleanor Gentilman from Littleton to share a moment of gratitude.
Good morning. It's wonderful to see all of you. Thank you for coming. On behalf of the Joint Summer Service planning teams past and present, I would like to express our deep appreciation and gratitude for all the people who have supported the service since our first conversations, which started 20 plus years ago with the idea. If I mentioned everyone by name, we would be here until next August 2024, so I won't. How did we start? The Littleton, Harvard, and Stow congregations already had many thriving connections. The Women's Alliances of Littleton and Harvard went to each other's programs. We visited each other's church fairs and attended Littleton's wonderful Firehouse Coffee House, which brought so many people together. We had many heartfelt conversations about how to build and strengthen our connections so that we could support each other's ministries and programs. Our hope was that together we could be of greater service and help in creating a world community of peace, justice, freedom, and equity for everyone. One of the themes of our services many years ago was the power of we, working together. All of us said we really enjoyed our existing summer services. They were great. Yet many of us missed the sermons and singing in the choir. So Barbara Henderson from Harvard, Rick, Gentilman from Stow, Acton, and myself brought the idea to our ministers and church leaders, and so we began. As time passed, word spread, and members of other churches started attending. Lancaster and Marlborough and Hudson joined the planning team. People from Bolton and Berlin, I hope I said it right, Berlin, also started attending and helping with the planning. And then came the advent of virtual church, and that spread even farther to Westborough, Upton, Grafton, and many other churches who, some of us are here today, thank you, and others join us online. I want to take a moment to especially thank members of the early teams, Barbara Henderson, Otto and Dorothy Solbrig, Carrie Browse of Harvard, Diane DeFranzo of Marlborough, Hudson, Brian Walters, who is with us today from Lancaster, and Reverend Bob Johansson, their Minister Emeritus. Lancaster has also joined the hosting teams and has done the service several times. Thank you again to the congregations, ministers, music directors, choirs, your wonderful voices, staff, and divinity students and interns who also helped us with the services. Your talents, creativity, and joy birthed our growing beloved community of congregations. As we often say, love is the spirit of our churches.
Alleluia, alleluia. Good morning. We come together this morning from many communities across this area and over the internet, and indeed here in this room we come from many other states and even other countries. We come together from many different backgrounds, different in race, in class, in gender, in sexuality, different in our ways of neural processing and in our physical abilities. We come together as people of different theologies, as people with different types of spiritual practice, different in things which connect us to the holy, to the sacred, or to the world larger than ourselves. In all of our beautiful diversity, you are welcome here. And despite all of our differences, and indeed in celebration of them, we come together this morning, drawn together for this one sacred hour, for a time of celebrating, a time of connection, a time of music and spoken word, a time of learning perhaps sometimes, a time of spiritual reflection perhaps sometimes, of connecting deeper or outside of ourselves. Come, let us begin. Let us worship together. Welcome. Our chalice is lit this morning by David Dunn of the Harvard Congregation. And as we light our chalice, please rise in body or in spirit and join in our opening hymn in your gray hymnals, number 347, Gather the Spirit.
Please join me in reading the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
I invite you now into a time of meditation. Please adjust your position as necessary. If you are able, without forcing it, you might put your feet on the floor. Rest your body as comfortably as you can against the back of your pew or your seat. If you are able, without forcing it, I invite you to hold your hands open, palms up, resting on your lap or on your chair. If you are comfortable, I invite you, if you haven't already, to close your eyes, or if you prefer, to hold your eyelids relaxed and half closed. Breathe with me. Take a few full breaths. Notice the feeling of the air coming in and the air going back out. Notice the feeling of relief when you breathe in, and notice the feeling of relief when you breathe out. Enjoy your breathing. We give thanks for this gorgeous day. We give thanks for the opportunity to be together, sitting and breathing in peace with our ship's companions on this beautiful blue boat in this lovely sanctuary. We remember all those who are not sitting in such peace at this time. May they be relieved of suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be filled with loving kindness. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we do all that we can to make this so. Breathe with me. May we remember with the great mystic Julian of Norwich that all will be well and all will be well and every manner of thing will be well. And may we do what we can to make this so. And when you are ready, slowly, gently open your eyes. Blessings to you, you beautiful being, on this beautiful day.
I'm the Reverend Tom Rossiello, Minister Emeritus of First Parish of Stow and Acton. It's wonderful to be back in this space and with all of you this morning. If we follow the model of the great Unitarian novelist Charles Dickens, I come to you as the ghost of Christmas past. Joking aside, it's an honor to share with you some of the rich past of the relationships represented here in this room today. You know, sometimes we use the term mixed marriage to describe a couple where one partner is from one faith tradition and the other from a different one, where one attends a different church, the other a different church, you know, perhaps a Catholic or a Jewish person. Well, when I first came here to First Parish Stow Acton, I experienced an even more extreme situation. A couple who went to two different UU churches. Rick Gentilman to Stow, Eleanor to Littleton. Now at first, that seemed a bit odd to me, but what a blessing it has been. And the way I see it, it's that mixed marriage of two wonderful people under the same roof at home, but usually under different church roofs, that's responsible for this summer service. And I also want to acknowledge, as Eleanor did from the earliest days of creating the joint service, they were aided by the late Barbara Henderson of the Harvard Church. So there you have the initial triumvirate of individuals and churches. And if memory serves me right, I believe we even used to call this the three-church service in those early days. But over time, again, as Eleanor reminded you this morning, members of these various churches from other places came together. Lancaster, Marlborough, Hudson came on board. A bit later, Berlin and Bolton joined, at least for some of the services. And the new congregations often became part of this group because of connections developed between ministers or staff members from one church, or colleagues or with colleagues or friends in another church that was not already included. And of course, with the pandemic, it became possible for the net to go even wider, and congregations from geographically a bit further were made part of this. You know, on the cover of your order of service, you'll see listed those congregations, some for 20 years, some for just a year or two, who have been part of this service. Now, there were some joint services in this area before this project started. Many years before I came to Stow, there actually was a joint service most of the summer with the now defunct Union Congregational Church, which used to be almost next door to us. But as their theology became more conservative and less inclusive, and ours went the other way, the collaboration stopped. In my time, there were interfaith Thanksgiving services and UU and interfaith special services like peace vigils. Now, I make this point because I think it's great that as UUs, we have this service with other UUs from our tradition. But as our community becomes more and more polarized, I hope we can still try to extend to the extent possible the invitation to share worship with those beyond our tradition as well. Well, back to our UU context for a little bit of history. When I was ordained and before, the custom in most New England churches was to have very little going on in the summer. It used to be said, God goes to camp for the summer. And a lot of members of the congregations did in fact go to summer homes then. But demographics had been changing for some time, and more people were around in the summer and were looking for more from their churches. Back 20 or more years ago, ministers were hired with contracts that basically said they had study time and vacation time that took up most, if not all, the summer. When I first started here in Stow Acton, after the flower communion service the first Sunday in June, I did not appear in the pulpit other than for a wedding or a memorial service until the Sunday after Labor Day. With people more available and looking for something more in the summer, most churches in this area started some kind of lay-led summer services. And many loved the opportunity to have their lay members lead worship. But often with little or no funds, congregations struggled to have a summer full of meaningful and uplifting worship experiences. As much as many love the informal lay-led summer services, for many something was missing. For many it seemed like a really long time to go without the opportunity to sing in a choir or experience a minister preach and lead worship, or just the spiritual energy of gathering in a church with a good-sized group of worshipers. So the idea of coming together to create this experience made a lot of sense. And about 100 or more people from many different churches have gathered on this Sunday for the past 20 years for an enriching worship experience with a choir and professional musicians and an opportunity to make music together and hear a good sermon. Also, these services gave many intern ministers and divinity students, many of them homegrown in our own congregations, an opportunity to preach. Each congregation brought something uniquely them to the service, and by sharing its traditions, it allowed one congregation to see how another does this part of the service, or that part of the service, or doesn't do that part of the service. Even to experience the language of faith that was used in other congregations. Recognizing that we are all UUs, but certainly we are not exactly the same. And the offering taken up at these services never went to benefit one church or one person's pet project. The offering was a way to connect these UU congregations to the greater UU world and to share in its work for justice. It's amazing. Well over $10,000 has been raised by these services and given to the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Now, it was not just from this one worship service every year that these connections between congregations grew. Eleanor mentioned to you that women's groups, then called women's alliances, I think in most of them, would meet together or for programs or go to each other's programs. Even more so, social action groups from these different congregations would join in projects, particularly in building a Habitat for Humanity house. People from one church would support another church's church fair or coffee house or classical music concerts. And certainly many aspects of religious education programming has been shared. For many years, joint OWL programs were done by Stow and Littleton and other churches. Churches with larger youth groups opened them up to youth from smaller UU congregations to get the critical mass that's so necessary for a vibrant youth program. You know, we sometimes beat the drum of our autonomous, self-governing, independent church status. But the idea that fully autonomous churches should not come together to help one another is certainly not new. In 1640, our forebears were part of what's called the Cambridge Platform, which was a pledge of mutual cooperation between local churches. If you go back in history, you'll find there are wonderful examples in the 16, 17, 18, 1900s of churches that burned down or ministers who died suddenly and where other churches came to help them through their tough times. Helping others, congregation to congregation, is in our founding DNA. Yet still, most congregations in UU-rich New England have a history of working in silos, pretty much on their own. Where I now serve as minister in the middle of Mexico, the nearest congregation is at least 5-hour drive away. You are incredibly fortunate to have so many UU congregations in such close proximity. This makes possible not just this service, but so much more. We should celebrate this 20th anniversary milestone, but I hope we do so with an eye to the future. A foundation of cooperation between UU congregations has been laid. Churches of different sizes, different gifts, different experiences, different resources, different demographics, even different theologies. There's so much more we could share. So many things we could do better if we did them together. Our faith tradition and our churches face challenges and opportunities right now. This is the time to ponder how we can build on that foundation of collaboration in a way to mutually benefit and strengthen our congregations. I look forward to learning how you will do that. And now I invite you to attention to the screen and to listen really carefully because the volume is a bit low.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Alice Anacheka-Naisman, and I serve the Unitarian Church of Marlborough and Hudson. I send you greetings from Lake Peconic State Park, where I'm currently on vacation with my family. It is a wonderful and amazing thing to be able to participate in this service via this video, which I recorded before I left on vacation. I was asked to speak about some of the history of collaborations in this cluster area of congregations. I first came here 21 years ago from New York. In New York, I became a Unitarian Universalist, first at the Unitarian Society of Oneonta. At that time, and still today, the closest neighbors were 1 hour to the east, Albany, 1 hour to the west, to Binghamton, and 2 hours to the north, to the Syracuse congregations. I I actually traveled that 2-hour trip to Syracuse when I first became the religious education director for the congregation, so that I could meet with Reverend Liz Strong and learn everything about Unitarian Universalist RE, or at least everything I could learn in a day, which she so graciously and generously spent with me. From that context, I came to Hudson. Hudson borders 6 towns, and 4 of them have a Unitarian Universalist congregation or a federated church that includes Unitarian Universalism. And if you extend that radius half an hour in every direction, we could arrive at dozens of Unitarian Universalist congregations, including those that you all attend. It is a wonderful opportunity to have so many Unitarian Universalist neighbors. And yet the truth is we haven't always taken full advantage of that opportunity. I remember at a regional meeting, the annual meeting for what was at that time the Clare Barton district.
Give us a moment. We'll get this back running, I think. Do you want us to? Folks, while we work out our technical difficulties, let's just move to the next hymn, and then we'll see if we can get that video back up and running. Our next hymn is We Would Be One. I'm going to read this little piece from Kimberly Davis's blog notes from the Far Fringe. She says, I should mention that the lyrics set to the Finlandia tune by Gene Sibelius were written by Unitarian minister Samuel Anthony Wright for Unitarian and Universalist youth at their Continental Convocation of 1953 to 54. As Jackie James notes in between the lines, quote, at this conference, they merged to form the liberal religious youth of the United States and Canada, setting a model for the Unitarian Universalist denominational consolidation in 1963. We would be one indeed. A perfect song for us to sing today. Please rise in body or spirit.
And she was surprised to find that her guides really couldn't answer that question. because they didn't know anything about these other Unitarian Universalist congregations. They hadn't been closely enough in contact. And she charged us at that annual meeting, she charged us to change that. She charged us to reach out to our neighbors, to get to know one another, to collaborate with each other. And I'm really glad to say that we've been doing that here in this area for quite some time now. I've been personally enriched by it in my ministry to have those connections, especially the connections with my colleagues, meeting together with the local clergy, but also before that with the other religious education directors. Over the past 10, 20 years, I've really seen an increase in our collaborations. The first ones that I was really aware of or part of were all coming from religious education, which is often the case. That's often where we first partner up, because our small congregations discover that in order to offer a thriving program for our teens, for our youth, to have a program like Our Whole Lives run successfully, Our Whole Lives Sexuality Curriculum, we need the critical mass of more than one congregation. And so we partner up, and that's exactly what we've been doing in this area. The first collaboration I was part of was a shared junior youth group with Stow, Acton. We had sleepovers in my church, and I remember the amazing beauty of sleeping in our sanctuary with the sunlight in the morning coming through the windows and the moonlight at night through our stained glass windows. My children both were raised in this area as Unitarian Universalists, and both benefited from the opportunities of combined programming, a combined coming of age program in which they traveled to New York City to learn about homelessness and volunteer in soup kitchens. The combined Our Whole Lives programs that they both participated in, and my younger child had their first real sweetie, who was from the Grafton congregation. In more recent years, I've seen this collaborative spirit growing more and more, with the example of this combined worship service starting to translate into other combined worship services, especially during the pandemic, as we joined one another on Zoom. My congregation is partnered up with, I think, 5 other congregations this summer, offering worship services every week, on the road worship services. This being one of them in our series. More and more often, I am part of conversations where we ask the questions, how can we support one another? What could we do with social action and justice? What could we do with our religious education programs? How might we share staff? I am excited to see where these go. The pandemic taught us that we had to think outside the box. It provided us with new tools, and I am eager to be part of this unfolding journey as we continue these processes of collaborating and getting to know one another.
Good morning, I'm Laura Hoke from First Church Unitarian in Littleton. It's so good to be with you this morning. Who are we now, August 6th, 2023? One thing's for sure, we are survivors. If you are here today, present in this sanctuary, or if you are with us virtually online, you have survived a global pandemic. That's no small thing. 20 years ago, when these wonderful joint services began, I'm sure you never could have dreamed what these past few years have been like. And while we grieve the tragedy of those who were lost through the pandemic, we have gratitude for all of us and all that has made it through. And we have appreciation for the great learning from this time, The things that we were probably going to do, get around to doing, like live streaming services and offering more things online. These are skills that the pandemic forced us to learn, and to learn quickly, and to improve faster. We're still learning, to be sure, but we have come a long, long way in a short time, and that is to be celebrated. We should celebrate today our great adaptivity, our great resourcefulness, our persistence through adversity. There are a few things about who we are today and the world today that you might not have imagined 20 years ago. Take the global climate crisis. 20 years ago, I was the director of a small startup nonprofit called Massachusetts Interfaith Power and Light. And we worked with congregations to help them conserve energy and consider renewable energy options. And 20 years ago, that was a hard sell. Even among Unitarian Universalists, that could be a hard sell. Not everyone believed then that the global climate catastrophe was real or that it was as serious as we thought it was. And yet, today, I think we get it. We Unitarian Universalists grasp that it is a clear and present danger that will impact many of us greatly in our lifetimes, and certainly the younger generations among us. Another area that stands out as I think about the present is that 20 years ago, you probably didn't worry that fascism was on the rise. You probably didn't worry that there was a threat to democracy in the United States. Today, it's not at all clear that the United States is going to be a superpower in any way other than militarily in the future. And though I never would have dreamed that I would say this 20 years ago, it does not feel certain to me today that the United States as I have known it will exist in 20 years. There are some scary realities about this time we live in. But remember that we are survivors, and we have a proud tradition as Unitarian Universalists, and we have a role, an important role, as the 21st century continues. There's another word when I think of us today and look out at you and think of all the people with us online. And when I think about the fact that there are at least 12 congregations represented here, I believe a few more. The word I also think of today is abundance. Think of all the available wealth of time, talent, and treasure from local, nearby Unitarian Universalist congregations. We have a great saving message. Unitarian Universalists have a liberal religious message that is still very needed in this world. And yes, we are a people facing much uncertainty post-pandemic and in light of the climate crisis and the crisis of democracy. But we have our faith and our values. We have our community. We know how to work together. We are survivors who are resourceful, creative, and resilient. We know that challenge often leads to innovation, and there is so much potential in this moment. We are a faithful people sitting on the threshold, loving each other and the world in this liminal time, knowing that another world is possible. Where are we going? Are we the ones that we've been waiting for, to quote the song? We have an opportunity to dive into and live into our mission and our loving faith, like our lives and our descendants' lives depend on it, because they do.
I am your ghost of Christmas future. In her poem, Seven of Pentacles, the poet Marge Piercy says, "Connections are made slowly. Sometimes they grow underground. You cannot always tell by looking what is happening. More than half the tree is spread out in the soil under your feet. Penetrate quietly as the earthworm that blows no trumpet. Fight persistently as the creeper that brings down the tree. Spread like the squash plant that overruns the garden." When I think of the future of Unitarian Universalism, of how we need to be and to grow into this future, these Marge Piercy words are the ones that I always think of, that we need to grow not like just an upward tree motion, not like a siloed steeple, but like the tree and how it spreads its roots wide and deep. That we need to grow like the squash plant that overruns the garden, growing wide, growing connected. That's what this joint summer service has been about, as you've heard, that we connect not just upwards with our steeples pointed to the sky, but across this land, like the squash plant, church to church, coming together to build community in this area. In our lessons that we take from this time of pandemic towards the future, this is one of the biggest to me, that our strength came through our connection, that our churches survived by networking together like never before. How many of your churches held a joint service during the pandemic with another church? Or how many of you virtually visited another church for a Sunday so that your minister could have a respite, or your lay ministers could have respites, right? We shared videos of hymns and videos of preludes and offertories, anthems, networked together like nodes of the internet, and we stayed strong through that together. Shrunk a little when you look at individual numbers across the board, but grew if you look at us like a squash plant. We've created something here with this joint summer service which has been a model to us through those hard times, which has sustained us for 20 years. But I think now, as we grow into the future, it positions us for something more. Those individual instances of sharing and connection that we've shared from the past and the present, they point our way to the future. Church life is changing. We've moved to being online in so many of our operations, including Sunday services. We've seen numerical drops across the country and financial drops that go with that. We've moved into a world where the very concept of Sunday service is no longer the central drawing point for congregations that it once was, as people know that as they can get all this content asynchronously and have moved to asynchronous connections and communications more and more. I keep saying what an 18th or even 17th, 16th, or 15th century concept this is, this model of worship that we follow, based on the idea that you're going to get great information and learn what's going locally and hear cutting edge ideas and have community all in this 1 hour of the week. Now we have YouTube with its worship services archived. We have TED Talks and university lectures and major chorale groups and folk musicians all there, all the time, 24 hours a day. But here we are this morning because we are networking like that squash plant. We are building community across congregations. We are connecting person to person. And that's what we still need. So joint service, summer service, yes, will continue. And hopefully many of us will be here for the 30th anniversary or even the 40th and beyond. But joint religious education and joint social events and joint social justice works particularly need to continue more and more between us, building our connections that are true and lasting across our communities. Marge Piercy continues in her poem, "Gnaw in the dark and use the sun to make sugar. Weave real connections, create real nodes, build real houses, live a life you can endure, make love that is loving, keep tangling and interweaving and taking more in, a thicket and bramble wilderness to the outside, but to us, interconnected with rabbit runs and burrows and lairs." That's the future I love. What will sustain and grow Unitarian Universalism, and what will sustain and grow us each individually, friends. A rabbit run between Stow here and Lancaster, between Bolton and Hudson, between Fitchburg and Littleton, between Berlin and Northborough, Westborough, Grafton, and all the rest. And yes, a rabbit run all the way down to Mexico and through the sea to Israel. Because our connections are far and wide. They strengthen us and sustain us, and indeed, they are us. We are us. Marge Piercy concludes, "This is how we are going to live for a long time, not always. For every gardener knows that after the digging, after the planting, after the long season of tending and growth, the harvest comes." Amen to that. Off we go into the harvest of the future, folks. As was mentioned before, our tradition here at the Joint Summer Service is to take a collection and for that to go to the UU Service Committee, to which we've donated thousands of dollars over the years. So please give generously to this important justice work of our faith, and we'll hear a video presentation before we take the offering.
My name is Laura Randall, a minister on staff at the UU Service Committee, better known as UUSC. I'm delighted to be able to share our gratitude for all you have done and continue to do in support of UUSC during 2 decades of joint summer services. Over the last 20 years, your collective generosity has supported UUSC with over $10,000. Incredible. We are honored to be partnering with you, bringing our UU values into the world to advance justice and dismantle systems of oppression. Several of my UUSC colleagues are here to share more about what UUSC does around the world with your continued support. Thank you, friends.
UUSC is an international human rights organization. We're grounded in the principles of Unitarian Universalism and the Universalist Declaration of Human Rights. At UUSC, we seek to advance human rights, dismantle systems of oppression, and uphold the inherent dignity and worth of every human being.
Founded in 1940, UUSC addresses the needs of people who've been ignored or overlooked, working in places where the larger aid agencies often do not.
We are committed to building upon a legacy that is rooted in locally led initiatives, working hand in hand, eye to eye, and heart to heart with community leaders and grassroots organizations in the United States and around the world.
Today, UUSC has over 30,000 members, partnering with more than 40 grassroots organizations. Our programs span across 20 countries in Asia, the South Pacific, Central America, and the United States.
We do our work in 3 ways: through advocacy and action with UU congregations, UUSC members, and our incredible volunteers; through education and experiences with the UU College of Social Justice; and through grant-making, convenings, and collaborative research.
With our partners, we address human rights issues including disaster justice, emergency relief in the face of natural or human-made crises, climate action, working with communities who are losing their homes due to climate change, and criminalization, partnering with communities who are targeted simply for their activism or being who they are, immigrants, LGBTQ people, and ethnic and religious minorities.
We know that UUSC members expect us to always be learning and be bold in our programming and our commitment to human rights.
We want you to have confidence in our work. UUSC is a terrific investment for your philanthropic support. Our budget goes far to accomplish so much for human rights in the U.S. and around the world.
And for 10 years running, UUSC has earned 4 stars, the highest possible rating from Charity Navigator, because of our effectiveness and fiscal transparency.
It is an exciting time at UUSC. We are grateful to you and to all of our members for your partnership and for putting your faith in us. You make our work possible.
The word benediction, of course, means good words. Today I would like to leave you with what I hope are some good questions. Is it not our calling to build community, to connect communities, to move beyond walls of isolation, to share the journey, to do the work that we are called to do together? Does it not feel good to be with neighboring UUers, particularly at this time when so many of the values that we hold are under threat? Can we not learn more from each other? Is not more possible on many different fronts? Would not our separate congregations benefit in many different ways if we do more together? Thank you for being with us today, either in person or on Zoom. And let us now share a benediction with each other by joining in the closing words printed in your order of service. We have gathered in hope, worshiped in love, and lifted our hearts in peace. We go now to share these blessings with the world.
I am Eric Semple, and I guide the music for the UU Ukes. We invite you to join us in singing Blue Boat Home. It's a little different from what you're used to. This is my arrangement. So we have 4 measures of an introduction, and this intro will appear after each verse. Please join us.